Next up is from Bryant Pfeiffer. Many of my friends were unable to purchase tickets opening weekend due to a 3-hour showtime, NFL draft, and other reasons. I know many people are waiting until week 2 to see Avengers Endgame. Although Endgame may not break box office records opening weekend, what are the chances it breaks records in week 2? I think there's a good chance Endgame will have one of the smallest second weekend percent drops for any superhero movie thus far. Thoughts?
Well, my first thought is this. Endgame's going to break the opening weekend box office record. I mean, Endgame's going to beat the opening weekend box office record. Now, again, there are some people who say there are problems with that. And just to recap the math of that, it's not the craziest thing in the world to suggest that maybe it won't. There was a great article in Variety that basically broke down the math on it and says, here's the challenges that Endgame's face. Now, Infinity War was one of the biggest wide release films of all time. All right. It opened on 4,500 screens. At 3 hours, the way they broke down the math was that on average, they're going to be able to have one less screening per day per screen because of the length of the movie, right? So at 4,500 screens, that equals to about 4,500 less screenings per day. The average movie theater size is 250 seats, many much bigger, some much smaller. 250 seats multiplied by 4,500 screenings is like 1.1 million fewer tickets available per day. You extrapolate that over a couple of days, now you've got 2.2, almost 2.3 million fewer tickets available per day. At the average of $10 movie ticket, which is the national average, at 2.2 million seats, that's over $22 million in box office that's not going to be available to Endgame that was available to Infinity War. All that being said, I still think Endgame is going to pretty comfortably beat the opening weekend record. I still believe it's going to probably pretty comfortably beat the opening weekend record. I still don't think 300 is in the ballpark. I don't think 300 is on the table, but I think it's going to beat that record and beat it pretty comfortably. But Rob, when we start talking about second weekend drop-off for this thing, there's a couple of big things that come into play here. Number one is the quality of the movie. Like, right. Again, we don't know how good or bad the movie is. We're assuming it's going to be awesome, but everybody has a bad day at the office. Maybe this is, their bad day at the office. Who knows? But the other thing is this, and this is something that you and I have pointed out a lot of times, and it's really going to come into play here. The more people that run out to see a movie opening weekend, the more of a drop you're going to have in week 2. I mean, sometimes if a movie sucks, you're going to get a big drop. Like we've seen some terrible movies that have a 70+% drop from week 1 to week 2. Even if that's not the case here, even if Endgame is really good,
right,
you're still going to get around a 50% or more drop simply because week 1 is going to be so big. And like we've talked about this a lot lately about more and more our movie-going culture is gravitating more and more towards seeing movies opening weekend. That seems to be when more and more people are going opening weekend, which means the more people that go opening weekend, the more people who have already seen it by the time weekend number 2 comes around. Now you're going to get repeat showings and all that kind of stuff. So I'll tell you what, I think Avengers Endgame is going to have a record-setting second weekend box office, but not when it comes to percentage drop. I think it's going to make like $130 million second weekend, which will be a new record for most money made on a second weekend. But I think its percentage drop is still going to be 50% plus just because so many people are going to see it. So no, I don't think you're going to see any kind of new record for smallest percentage drop from week 1 to week 2, simply because of the sheer size of the numbers. Rob, what do you think? Do you think that it can still do that, or do you see it the same way I do?
I pretty much see it the same way you do. Look, it's going to shatter all box office records for opening weekend. It probably is well on the way to already doing that with the pre-sales because they haven't stopped. There's probably just people are still stacking up those showings throughout the first week. And it all really comes down to how good the movie is.
Yeah.
If this movie delivers Return of the King style fulfillment, and it really does give us those character moments, and it really is that emotional, and it really does give us a climax where your jaw's slack-jawed hanging on the ground. You have to pick it up when the lights come up. if it gives us that kind of entertainment, who knows how much this movie is going to make? Because everybody in the world's going to go see it. Everybody with kids is going to have to drag their kids to see it. I mean, it's going to be a huge, huge deal. And again, the running time is always going to be a factor, and the amount of venues are going to be a factor. It's not like there's suddenly 5,000 more theaters across this great nation where they can go and see more showtimes. So it is limited by the number of, well, the actual minutes long it is. But I just think that this is a cultural event like we haven't seen in the movies, maybe since Return of the King. And I think everyone's going to go. I think it's probably going to have a record-setting second weekend, like you said, and maybe even a third and fourth. If the movie's good, it's going to have staying power. But I don't think the NFL draft plays into whether people are going to go see this movie or not. You know, I think people are going. I think this is a cultural event, the likes which we haven't seen in a very long time. And like I was saying, Captain Marvel is going to have the untapped female audience. You've got whole families. This is an event, man. This is a big deal for moviegoers around the world. I mean, everyone's excited about it. The Avengers, they have such goodwill. People love these characters. You have kids. We've heard from kids on this show that have grown up with it, that went from seeing a movie, their first comic book movie at 8. Now they're in college. They're going to take their friends. I mean, this film is not like a regular movie. I think this movie's got an incredible wave, a surge behind it, and we're going to see box office like we've never seen before. But I like you think, like you said, I'm sure someone says, well, if it doesn't shatter every box office record, it's somehow not as successful as it was supposed to be. And we're going to get that. We're going to get people saying that. If the movie isn't good, if the movie isn't good, that's the only way it's not going to become the most successful movie. I'm not going to say it's shattering Avatar, but it has a shot. And I think this movie.
I don't think it has. I don't think it has the remotest shot at Avatar, but it's got. I believe it's got a shot at Titanic. I think it can pass Titanic.
For sure. I'm thinking 2.5 billion.
Whew. But even at 2.5 billion, you're over $200 million away from Avatar, right? So
I know.
I think we are going to see this. I think at the end of the day, we're going to see the second biggest film of all time. I think it's going to pass Infinity War, then it's going to pass The Force Awakens, and I do think it's going to pass Titanic, and then it'll fall somewhere between that 2.15 and that 2.7 gap between Avatar. How close or how far, we'll see. But I think I agree with you. I think it's going to end up in that kind of area in there somewhere. All right, guys.
Unless it's incredible and incredibly satisfying, and you have to see it again.
I don't know, because I mean, people felt that way about Infinity War, and it didn't catch Titanic. And people loved Infinity War, and we did go back time and time again. So once you get north of 2 billion, well, first of all, once you get to 1 billion, that's an incredible number. But once you get into this uncharted territory of north of 2 billion, I mean, it ain't just math. I mean, that we're talking about some astronomical numbers, because you're talking about like Infinity War out last year with the beginning of the culmination of the MCU, and the movie was beloved and loved, and people loved it, and the snap and all that kind of stuff. And people went back, and it made $2 billion.
Insanity.
It's nuts. These numbers are astronomical. All right, guys, what do you think about all this? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.